Let's talk about sacrifice because I see as we evolve as human beings, we become a little less sacrificial and more selfish. You can't be selfish and sacrifice something. See, sacrificial mentality and selfish mentality cannot coexist in the same being. If someone makes a sacrifice, it's an act of unselfishness. And selfish people refuse to sacrifice. Sometimes when people give up things that other people see that are totally worthy, they're thinking that that person gave it up because they just didn't have any use for it anymore, that they thought it was worthless. Maybe that person felt that they weren't ready to handle whatever it was that they had. They felt that they didn't have the strength or the mentality to handle whatever, whoever came into their life. So they sacrificed it and gave it to something else that will take better care of it at that time. It could be anything. I can give you an example. Once upon a time, I knew someone who came from a very wealthy family. A family that made lots of money for generations, but when that person reached of age, they couldn't find themselves and they weren't very productive. They got caught up in the drug game, got in trouble a few times, and failed to finish their formal education. They had a lot of pending cases for child support and had bad relationships with the children as well as the mothers of the children. So when they reached of a certain age, even though they were trying to get themselves cleaned up, they had done enough spiritual and mental work on themselves to realize that they were not ready to handle a seven-figure trust at that time. So what they did, they sacrificed it and allowed someone else in the family that was closer to them to act as a custodian on their behalf, even though they were at the age of maturity to handle it. But they knew deep inside that if they handled it at that current state, that it would disappear very quickly. So they, after months of deliberation as to what to do with it, they decided to go ahead and sacrifice that trust to that cousin. And that was the best thing that they did, because here it is 30 years later and they're still able to get a portion of that trust that was well invested every single month, regardless of what happened in their job situation or anything else. They'll get that check every single month until the money was invested well and it was handled well. That person made a sacrifice. Even though they had something that was due to them, they felt in their mind that they were not mentally prepared to handle that responsibility, and they were afraid if they took that responsibility on that they would ruin it and that they would destroy it or it would disappear. That takes a lot of spiritual and mental work to come to a decision like that. But a lot of us nowadays have gotten to the point where we are so complex that we can't even see the simplicity of knowing what we're responsible for and what we're capable of being responsible for. For some of us, just because we reach a certain age doesn't mean that we automatically know how to handle certain things in our lives that are associated with that age that we're at. Some of us might be in an age to go to college, but it might not be the time for them to go to college because they may not have the discipline or the stability to go to college right now. Maybe it's best that they wait a year or two until they develop that mentality, because they know if they went right now, they probably would not finish because they would not be committed the way they think they should. So they sacrifice their education for a little while and go out into the world and see what things are like. Am I encouraging all children to do this? No. I'm just saying that there are situations sometimes in life where things happen in certain periods of people's lives, and things that are usually associated with that particular age group that they're in, they may not be mentally or spiritually able to handle it at that time. So what they'll do is they'll sacrifice that responsibility to someone who can handle it at that time while they figure out how to pull themselves together. That's all I'm saying. But see, a lot of people don't understand the concept of making a sacrifice in order to benefit something that they care about. It's not that they don't care about their education. They do, but they want to make sure they do it correctly, and they know at the current mind state they do not have that capability of sticking to it. So instead of throwing away the idea of altogether, they're just basically trying to put themselves in a mind space where they can start to learn how to discipline themselves and learn how to create a sense of stability so they can commit to it. It takes a really strong person to know that they can't handle something once it's presented in front of them. And the problem with the world is that they don't understand that. The average person in the world takes every single opportunity that's given in front of them. They just look at it as something good, look at it as something extra that they can have, something more that they can have, instead of thinking about the responsibilities associated with it and whether or not they have the mindset to even handle the responsibility. And most of the time when they get their hands on it, they wind up destroying it, and they don't understand why. It's because they do not have a concept of what sacrifice is. So the next time you make a sacrifice for anything and you have those so-called people around you to turn around and call you a fool for throwing it away, don't worry about it. You did what your soul told you to do. Those people don't live inside your head. And they don't make you breathe every single day, and they're not responsible for waking you up. You sacrificed because you knew you couldn't handle responsibility right now. And in my book, that takes a lot of courage. So kudos to you. Just saying.